Hello, hello. Welcome to episode 101 of the Lorethrough, where we are continuing our lore recap. Today we will be starting with the Greater Will, and we'll get snuggled up close to Muriel here because he has more lore to hear from us, and he loves the attention. I mean, he seems like a poor lonely turtle man, so. The Greater Will. For all intents and purposes, the Greater Will is the true deity of the world of Elden Ring. However, they could also be under the classification of Outer God, and they're simply in charge of the current power hierarchy. Like all deities in Soulsborne games, the Greater Will doesn't appear particularly altruistic. In fact, the Greater Will seems more concerned with bringing forth a form of order, no matter what form that may take. That being said, together with a golden star, the Greater Will once sent a beast to the lands between that would later become the Elden Ring. The Greater Will has vassals and envoys known as the Two Fingers, who speak in a sign language of light. Before the age of the Erd Tree, the Nox invoked the ire of the Greater Will, leading to their destruction. Their treason is proven by the Fingerslayer blade, which symbolizes their downfall, a blade of a corpse that is able to harm the Greater Will and its vassals. Fact checked true by local Tarnished, who witnessed the gruesome scene left behind by his wife, Lunar Princess Rani. The Nox who were committed to high treason also used ritual implements known as the Mirror Helms to ward off the intervention of the Greater Will and its vassals. They are unironic tinfoil hats. During the Age of the Erd Tree, ruled by Queen Marika the Eternal, and at least the era immediately preceding it, the Greater Will's envoy, the Two Fingers, selected Empyreans to become the gods of the following age. Queen Marika was one such candidate, and created the Golden Order by confining the Rune of Death. However, the Elden Ring would eventually shatter, cough cough, Marika, leading to Marika's demigod offspring inheriting the Great Runes, which would instigate the Shattering War. The Greater Will abandoned the demigods following the Shattering, as none managed to claim the title of Elden Lord. I can see it now. Thousands of bodies strewn about battlefields across the lands between. Destruction, chaos, a booming voice from the PA system attached to the boughs of the Erd Tree. No contest. Contradicting the narrator at the start of the game, the Two Fingers claim that the Greater Will has not abandoned the realm, nor the life that inhabits it, proclaiming this is why the Tarnished have been extended the guidance of grace. There's always something dampening about finding out that you're Plan B. After we, the Tarnished, return to the lands between, the Two Fingers, at the behest of the Greater Will, instructs us to kill the demigods in order to claim their great runes. This is with the aim to become Elden Lord and marry Queen Marika. After all, the Greater Will has long since renounced the demigods. Kill 'em all, he says. It worries me that we need only 2 great runes to access Leyndell and fix the realm, especially since there are clearly more great runes out there. If the Greater Will sent the Elden Ring here to bring about his order and influence, why would he be satisfied using only a fraction of the original device? If this cycle continues like previous Souls games, then we're going to end up with a smaller and smaller portion of the fragmented Elden Ring to fix the order. Maybe that's why there are mending runes like the one we got from Fia, or the one we could potentially get from Dung Eater. Maybe, just maybe, they supplement the missing parts of the Elden Ring. But it's like your mechanic telling you to bring the steering wheel and engine alone to fix your car. I sure hope there is more of the car in the Erd Tree, because there's no way we're driving anywhere with these 2 parts alone. Hoarah, chieftain of the Badlands. We don't know hardly anything about Hoarah, chieftain of the Badlands. We know he looks strikingly like Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, and he even has a great white lion over his shoulder, just like Godfrey, first Elden Lord. Well, we know that. And we know that he shares a name or title with Nefeli Lu, but that's all we really have for him at present. I might have more later on, actually, in the script, so we'll leave that be for now. The ever-brilliant Gold Mask. He actually has an credited voice actor. Yeah, I didn't know that either. Anyways, we know that the ever-brilliant Gold Mask is a tarnished scholar and a staunch Golden Order fundamentalist. We are told by Brother Corrin that Gold Mask predicted the guidance of grace, and upon being beckoned by it, he came to the lands between to contemplate the Golden Order, which indicates to us he is not only a man good with a good measure of faith, but he is also a man of some renown amongst the religious community. He is not without his critiques of certain subsets of the Golden Order adherents, however. As an example, Gold Mask was critical of the hunters who live in death, lamenting that their learnedness had been reduced to fanatical ravings and an obsession with finding a great evil to contend with, a concept which he did not believe existed within the Golden Order. To me, this shows how Gold Mask truly is brilliant, seeing far beyond the average worshipper or hunter. He knows something is wrong with the world and wishes to understand and uplift, maybe even fix, with the luminescent ring he saw in vision. While Gold Mask contemplates the Erd Tree and the Golden Order, while Gold Mask contemplates the Erd Tree, or while he contemplated the Erd Tree and the Golden Order, he was approached by Brother Corrin, a man of the cloth who wished to travel alongside him as a scholar. In Leyndell, Gold Mask becomes perplexed by the identity of Radagon, whose existence calls into question the principle that Queen Marika the Eternal is the one true God. With the help of us, the Tarnished, Gold Mask learns that Radagon is Marika. The question I have is, how long have they been a thing? No, not that kind of thing. You know what I mean. Fia, the Deathbed Companion, was of a profession that would receive the warmth and vigor from champions, and then use that power to lay with the remains of an exalted noble, to grant him another chance at life. This was the sole purpose of Fia's existence, and was considered a sacred act in her homeland. Now, the concept of a vaguely vampiric prostitute that uses stolen vigor to revive the elite ruling class feels like the epitome of a George R. R. Martin idea. I have no citation here. Fia was rudely interrupted before she could bear the noble into new life by the guidance of grace. Being able to see grace somehow manifested to those around her, and she was chased from her birthplace, traveling to the lands between. At some point, she became acquainted with Lionel, the Lion-Hearted, who declared himself to be her father. Personally, I don't think that's legally binding. It's also very odd. In the Round Table Hold, Fia continued to perform her role as a deathbed companion, including for our dear Roger, a spellblade fascinated with those who live in death. She also gave to us, a tarnished of no renown, some very tender hugs. We are so incredibly lonely. Being ever the academic, Rogier began an investigation into the events surrounding the Night of Black Knives, the incident that killed Godwin. Fia subtly aided us in the investigation by pointing us, the Tarnished, towards the Black Knife print, which was a tremendous clue. All the while, Fia granted her services to us, taking our warmth and vigor in exchange for her blessing. Blessings that lower your max HP by 5%, whether you like it or not. She eventually tasks us with returning a weather dagger to its original owner. Given the silver and gold composition of the weapon, we determine that to be none other than D, Hunter of the Dead. We blink once and find D dead and infested with Deathroot. The proud perpetrator, Fia, did this to gain possession of one half of the curse mark of death. And she returns to the malformed corpse of Godwin in the Deeproot depths. We have to fight through a number of ghostly champions before Fia reveals that she was the companion of Godwyn, the Prince of Death, and wished to become a mother to those who live in death. She then solicits our assistance in retrieving the other half of the curse mark, which she uses to gestate a mending rune that can be embedded in the principle that can embed the principle of life in death into order. Much like a television cooking show, we prepared our half of the curse mark in advance for convenience. This allows us to enter into the deathbed dream and put good friend Fortisax out of his misery. And put Godwyn's good friend Fortisax out of his misery. Upon our return to reality, we find that D, Beholder of Death, has killed Fia and avenged Hunter D. Regardless of Fia's mortality, we gain the mending rune she created. The loathsome Dung Eater is a miserable cretin, and he's a miserable cretin that once sought guidance and a ring that would appear at the end of his journey. Strangely mirroring the gold mask this so-called vision Dung Eater had, is of a curse he calls the pox upon life itself, or the reviled blessing. This future would cause everyone generationally to sustain the reviled blessing, and their souls would not be able to return to the Erd Tree. Because he's a freak, the Dung Eater decided to wear armor resembling the Omen, which represents the vision of the landscape of his mind, well as his appearance as he wished to see it. On his armor, a heavy sun-shaped medallion hangs to represent both the guidance and the ring he once saw in vision. The idiot assumed he would personally curse all life himself, so he started indiscriminately killing people and defiling their corpses to nourish the pox. In each defilement, the Dung Eater cultivates a seedbed curse upon a corpse that blocks the soul from returning to the Erd Tree. It's an eternal curse. Thankfully, he was eventually captured and publicly hanged, but killing the Dung Eater only resulted in him getting revived by grace as a tarnished. The Greater Will really doesn't care who's in charge so long as there's order. Jeez. Anyways, the Dung Eater was perpetually jailed in the forsaken depths below Lane-Dell. I hope that was the first thing that happened to him when he reached the lands between. When we first travel to Altus Plateau, an apparition of the Dung Eater is discovered within the Round Table Hold. Somehow, he gets his own room after being a homicidal sex offender, and I can't get one after gathering 3 great runes. We find the Dung Eater resting, and his insatiable bloodlust curbed by his abidance of the Pact of Non-Aggression found in the Round Table Hold. He feels the presence of his seedbed curse within our inventory and instructs us to set his body free from the jail hidden away in the sewer below the capital, with the intention of fully cursing us as well. Because we do just about everything asked of us, Dung Eater attacks and does unmentionable things to our good friend Blackguard Big Bogart. Talk about a repeat offender. Dung Eater immediately invades us as we finish speaking with Big Bogart. When defeated, the Dung Eater will claim something unexpected happened. Lag, internet issues, controller malfunction, anything to deflect from the skill issue he's having. He'll also note that his blessing was warded off by us, despite the curse stirring within him, a feat no one has succeeded in before. This is when he has a revelation. He was not the one who would curse the world as in his vision. He thinks we'll be the one to do it. Dung Eater is simply the vehicle to reach his cursed utopia. Filled with euphoria, the Dung Eater announces that his flesh is the one that must receive the blessing, and so he volunteers his flesh to be defiled with the seedbed curse again and again, until the ring he once saw coalesces, and is able to defile order itself, an act that would cost his life, but that he would be proud of. We chose not to follow the Dung Eater's will and defile his body until a mending rune is created. We rejected his idea to use said rune to bring about an age of despair. Seeing a more fitting punishment, we reduced the Dung Eater to a mindless puppet through Saluvis's potion. Don't worry too much about the mending rune of the fell curse. It doesn't say anything more that the Dung Eater hasn't already repeated ad nauseum. Well, except some pithy remark about how, if order is defiled entirely, defilement is defilement no more, and for every curse, a cursed blessing. Ideological extremism, am I right? He sounds a little bit like Syndrome from the first Incredibles movie. If everyone's super, then no one is. Okay. Sir Gideon Ofnir, the All-Knowing. Sir Gideon is the self-proclaimed tarnished leader of the Round Table Hold, and the adoptive father of Nefeli Lu. He was called to the lands between by the guidance of grace. Gideon wishes to become the Elden Lord. To this end, he accumulates information on the Shardbearers, employing a network of spies and goons to aid in his hunt for knowledge. Initially, he is apprehensive of us, but after we claim a great rune, he becomes willing to share his knowledge of the remaining Shardbearers with us. This doesn't stop him from sending Ensha as a retaliatory assassin for when we mark his Omen Killer. You know, the Omen Killer that teamed up with the depraved perfumer to genocide a remote village of Albinurix. Ensha was probably supposed to loot our half of the secret Haligtree Lift medallion, not to be confused with the halves of the Lift of Dectus medallion. Moving on, in the past, Gideon took in Nefeli Lu after she lost sight of the guidance of grace, taking advantage of her youthful credulity. He promised her that he would not allow the downtrodden to be cheated any longer if he became Elden Lord. He also became acquainted with Preceptor Seluvis and Dolores the Sleeping Arrow, although he said that although he and Seluvis would go their separate ways because of Dolores the Sleeping Arrow. Nameless Dead Finger Maiden that we find in the Chapel of Anticipation. We don't know anything about her. Perhaps she perished waiting for us. Maybe the grafted scion killed her. The Finger Maiden fillet reads, "The maidens live to serve a chosen tarnished, sharing their guidance and the wisdom of the two fingers. The guidance of grace would ensure that the pair be brought together, or at least such was the promise long ago." And the Traveling Maiden set reads, "Maidens traverse the land between for different reasons. Some to seek audience with the fingers, others to find the tarnished who they were destined to guide." Godfrey, first Elden Lord. Godfrey is the first Elden Lord of the Golden Order, and the former consort of Queen Marika the Eternal. Godfrey was once a ferocious warrior, but when he vowed to become a lord, he took upon his back the lion Serash, the beast regent, to suppress his ceaseless lust for battle that raged within. Godfrey and his offspring, with Queen Marika, became the first demigods, regarded as the Golden Lineage. Serash's image became an emblem of the Golden Lineage, and he, Serash, acted as counselor and guide for them. Notable members of the Golden Lineage include Godwyn the Golden, Godefroy the Grafted, and the feeble Godric, the last of the Golden Lineage. Before it came to be an embodiment of order, everything was in opposition to the Erd Tree. This age began amidst conflict, and Godfrey was regarded as the lord of the battlefield. He wielded a great double-headed axe in battle, and his symbol of the beast would later become a sign of his power. Axe ornamentation would also become symbolic of the Knight Ordovis, who commanded the Crucible Knights under Godfrey's command. Tenacious warrior that he was, Godfrey fought in a number of battles. During the siege of Castle Born, Godfrey bested a lone hero who fought for vengeance. At the end of his campaign, addressed by Queen Marika, she informed them that she had divested him and his men of their grace. She commanded them to leave the lands between to wage war in a land afar, where they would live and die. Thus, Godfrey and his kinsfolk became the first tarnished. And they left the lands between together on a pilgrimage known as the Long March. His loyal warriors honored him by wielding axes of their own, and the axes became weapons of choice for the Badland chieftains. This is the only tenuous connection I had between Lord Godfrey and Horolu, chieftain of the Badlands. Serosh, Counselor of the Golden Lineage. Beast Regent and Counselor of the Golden Lineage. Hopefully we'll learn more about Serosh in time, because his symbol is everywhere and now associated with Lord Godfrey. I have a feeling that the fortified manor may have once been his, like how the Stormhawk King ruled Stormvale. Were there countries of lions, hawks, and maybe even Fair Missoula beastmen? We have Blythe the half-wolf and Garank as well to add to that pool of mysterious beastly people. Were these nations of intelligent beasts bested by Godfrey during the Crucible era, when everything was chaotic and animalistic? Even humans? There are even demi-humans, misbegotten, and omen to account for. Ooh. Vare, the White Mask. Vare is an enigmatic man who dresses in the garb of a bizarre theater kid. We first meet him in Limgrave, where he offers us mildly condescending guidance, part of which includes noticing that we are not accompanied by a finger maiden. He points us in the direction of Stormvale Castle and recommends we kill ourselves. Challenge Godric, the Grafted, and take his great rune. Next, we see him again in Liurnia of the Lakes, outside of the Rose Church. Here, he tests our dedication to the two fingers, expressing his own doubts about the veracity of their words. If we humor his concerns, he reveals himself to be a loyal disciple of Mohg, Lord of Blood. And he tries to get us to join his new blood cult. After getting adequately hazed and soaking a cloth in the blood of a maiden, Vare awards us with the Pure Blood Knight's Medal, which will grant us an audience with Mohg when the time is right. He also crushes, or dislocates, or otherwise maims our finger, allowing us the ability to invade other worlds. We haven't seen Vare since. Kale, the Nomadic Merchant. Shrewd nomadic merchant who hangs around the Church of Ella. Too many people in my life had called him Santa upon first seeing him. While a shrewd and distrusting salesman, he recommends that we buy a crafting kit from him. He does mention that his people, the nomadic merchants, are all wanderers, having long been spurned by the grace of gold. If we tell him about howling we heard in the Mistwood, he instructs us on how to snap and meet Blythe. He describes Blythe by saying he's boorish, blunt, and couldn't find his nose with both hands, but he's a good egg. Melina, the burned and scarred ghost girl, is a mysterious spectral figure who stalks us, gives us crimson and cerulean flasks, and eventually offers to help us on our journey. This includes access to Torrent, the spectral steed, and the means by which to turn runes into strength. Finally, a maiden to call our own. While at churches dedicated to Queen Marika, Melina exposits exposition by quoting the God Queen directly. Once we have defeated Margit the Fell Omen for the first time, she casually drops the news that she was testing us. Seemingly satisfied, she offers to take us to the hub location known as the Round Table Hold. Upon arriving to the Erd Tree capital, Melina thanks us for the lift and leaves to ascertain her purpose, claiming she can govern her own movement more freely here and entrusts with us the power of runes and Torrent. She will also offer her aid should we challenge the boss after Marika's bedchamber before the base of the Erd Tree. Torrent. A good spectral steed with only 2 previous owners, mileage unknown. Good condition. I can't find the fuel tank. The Carfax laughed at me. Bok the Seamster. Bok is a demi-human seamster like his mother. Wanting to be like his mother, he inherited her sewing kit. The other demi-humans in his tribe cast him out. To add insult to injury, someone used a spell to turn Bok into a bush. Thankfully, we came around and roll at the bush to break the spell. In gratitude, Bok offers to sneak back into the cave that he has been exiled from in order to get something precious that he could repay us with. However, Bok was discovered by his former tribesmen, who mercilessly beat him to a pulp. When we find him again, Bok warns us not to enter the cave. Ignoring his flimsy warning, we avenge Bok with a side of genocide as a treat, and retrieve the sewing kit from his mother, or retrieve the sewing kit his mother had originally given him. Awed by our kindness, Bok vows to become a seamster like his mother. When we next see Bok, we're at the age of Liurni of the Lakes. There, he humbly offers his services as our personal seamster. He ends up following our path clear to Altus Plateau and even into the royal capital. As we draw closer to the throne of Elden Lord, Bok will begin to refer to us as a lord, after asking permission, of course. Even though we give Bok a golden needle worthy of a master seamster, which allows him to perform modifications to the garb of the demigods themselves, Bok remains terribly self-conscious and bothered by his appearance. He asks us whether we think he is ugly and expresses an interest in being reborn by Queen Renala. That's a red flag if ever we saw one. Instead, we use a prattling pate, which speaks in the voice of Bok's deceased mother, and it tells him that he is beautiful. Upon hearing this, Bok was contented, and he will continue serving us faithfully instead of dying terribly at the hands of Renala's ill-advised science project. Old Knight Istvan. We know he's one of the few surviving Wizened Tarnished. His signature weapon is a dismounter with the Ash of War, Gravitas. We killed him for his duds because Volcano Manor told us to. Graven Witch Selen. A former scholar of the Academy of Rea Lucaria, Selen was considered to be the Academy's most promising sorceress according to Tops. However, she was expelled following accusations of unspeakable treatment to her fellow scholars under the name of the Graven Witch. Selen had sought to restore the primeval current, desiring glintstone sorceries unbound by terrestrial taboos and the pedantry of the Carian royal family. This means she was committing war crimes in her research. A girl's gotta have a hobby, I suppose. Selen's first teacher at the Academy was Sorcerer Azur, one of the founding glintstone sorcerers and originator of the Carlos Conspectus. He's the green one with the pillar head, if you've forgotten. Azur, along with Lusat being the blue one with the orb head, were banished from the Academy due to their study of the primeval current, a pursuit Selen wished to follow. When Selen was expelled, Seluvis helped her in some capacity, for which she owes him. As a result, Selen tells us it is Radon who needs to die for Ranni's fate to resume its motion. Sometime after her banishment, Selen was imprisoned in the Witchbane ruins on the Weeping Peninsula, bound by the Academy's shackles. She managed to project an illusion of herself into the Waypoint ruins, where we see her for the first time. How she managed this feat while nailed to the wall underground some distance away is beyond me. How come the only spells sorcerers manage to share are basically different ways to fling glintstone at deadly speeds? I kind of want some of these neat utility spells that they have going on. Anyway, we became her apprentice and learned glintstone sorceries all the same. When we report that we found Master Azur on Mount Gelmir, Selen requests that we seek out Master Lusat, speculating that he returned to his home of Celia, Town of Sorcery. We discover Lusat in a near-organic state, much like Azur, in Celia Hideaway, and report back to Selen. With the defeat of Starscourge Radon, Selen becomes a target of witch hunter Jaren. He is a friend of the Carian royal family, who once made a promise to exterminate the witch. Selen reveals to us that the form we have been speaking to the whole time is merely a projection, and that her true body resides in Witchbane ruins. We meet with Selen's true body, shackled in the ruined cellar, and she asks us to remove her primal glintstone, beseeching us to look after it. Seems a little too personal a request to me, honestly. Like, buy me dinner or something first, jeez. After intentionally blacking out to the front menu, Jaren arrives to make Selen's previous body perish. Knowing of a pre-existing puppet of Selen's exact likeness, we travel to Seluvis's basement, where we place Selen's primal glintstone into the puppet. Selen, now in her new, more youthful body, returns to the academy and displaces Renala, Queen of the Full Moon. She has the bodies of Azur and Lusat moved back to the academy so that she can finally hone the primeval current. She offers her support to us in our mission to become Elden Lord, and requests that when the time comes, we illuminate her about the secret of life which courses through the Elden Ring. Before long, however, Jaren finally catches up to her. Against our better judgment, we aid her in defeating Jaren. She continues her research. When we next see her, she is transformed into a graven mass. Whether this was an accident of her research or retribution from Rani for attempting to dispose of Renala, we don't know. Okay, I have 2 more brief ones to read and then we will cut the episode. Primeval Sorcerer Azur. Azur is one of the founding Glintstone sorcerers and the originator of the Carlos Conspectus, considered to be the oldest and most venerable lineage of study at the Academy of Rea Lucaria, dedicated to pursuing the mysteries of the comets. Azur was Sorcerer Selen's first teacher at the Academy, and she viewed him as a stern judge of character. He glimpsed into the primeval current, where he saw darkness, leaving him both bewitched and fearful of the abyss. Along with the primeval sorcerer Lusat, another founding glintstone sorcerer, Azur was driven from the academy. He settled on Mount Gelmir. His body became overrun by blue-green glintstones, and he achieved a near-organic state, with the glintstone crown replacing his brain and skull. When we find him, Azur reaches out to us and grants us his legendary sorcery, Comet Azur. After revealing Azur's location to Selen and subsequently discovering the whereabouts of Lusat, Selen has the bodies of the 2 sorcerers moved to the Academy of Rea Lucaria, planning to use them to hone the primeval current. Let's see. Primeval Sorcerer Lusat. Lusat is one of the founding glintstone sorcerers, and the originator of the Olivinus Conspectus. He hailed from Celia, town of sorcery, a town that has magic-practicing assassins. At the Academy of Rea Lucaria, he studied meteors, which formed the basis of the Olivinus Conspectus. He also glimpsed into the primeval current, witnessing the final moments of a great star cluster, the sight of which broke him. Along with primeval sorcerer Azur, another founding glintstone sorcerer, Lusat was driven from the academy. He returned instead to his home of Celia, and he hid in a cave, Celia Hideaway. And he was protected by a barrier which could only be broken using a Celian seal breaker. In this cave, his body became corroded by glintstone as he attained a near inorganic state, with even his blue glintstone crown entirely replacing his brain and skull. When we find him, he bestows upon us his legendary sorcery, the Stars of Ruin. Okay, that'll be it for episode 101. Thank you for joining me. It's much appreciated. We'll see you next time for episode 102 as we continue this lore recap. Looking at my sidebar, it seems we're about halfway through the script, so I think we're making good time. Thank you, and I hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.